use shovel at home does not come with a little person, which would have been nice. And the reviewer's wish list page was listed to his name. So they seemed like jokes, but they were creepingly accurate and serious. So, following his arrest, he had claimed to his mother that there were many other victims aside from what the police had known. When his mother had asked how many, he had said, "You do not have enough fingers." So during interrogation, he claimed to have shot a victim in Arizona. And on November 18th of 2016, it was reported that the Tempe Police Department had begun an investigation into this claim, searching through unsolved homicides in the past 3 decades. They said that they would focus on cases dated from 83 to 86,